The sky above the jungle world of Ralanthus was bright with twin suns, casting sharp shadows between the tall, twisting trees. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and blooming flowers that glowed faintly in the sunlight. High above, the dense forest, a young Virilan girl named Illyra soared on shimmering wings made of crystal-like feathers. Her wings caught the light, sending tiny rainbows dancing through the air as she glided. Illyra loved to fly. It was the best way to feel free, like she belonged to the sky and not just the ground below. Her family had taught her since she was little how to navigate the currents of air that flowed around the planet's great trees. But today was different. The wind was stronger than usual, and dark clouds were gathering in the distance. She was alone, practicing a difficult turn she had seen older Virelans do. Her wings were still not strong enough for it, but she wanted to prove she could try. As she pulled sharply to the left, a sudden gust caught her off guard. Her wing cracked with a sharp, painful sound. One of the crystal feathers broke and fell. Away! Illyra's heart pounded. The wind pushed her down faster than she expected. She tried to spread her wings, but the damage made her unsteady. Below, the forest floor rushed up, trees and rocks getting closer by the second. Then she crashed. The fall did not last long, but it felt like forever. Her body hit the ground hard, rolling over the moss and dry leaves. Pain shot through her injured wing and her side. She groaned softly, barely able to move. Her broken wing lay limp, feathers scattered around her. For a moment, the only sound was the rustle of leaves and distant animal calls. Illyra blinked, trying to understand what had just happened. She was far from any known path in a part of the jungle that even the Virilan explorers avoided. It was a dangerous area, full of strange creatures and unknown threats. Her communicator was cracked and silent. No one could hear her calls for help. Tears filled her eyes, blurring the green of the trees around her. She felt alone, scared, and ashamed. She had fallen, failed, and now she was trapped. Illyra let her tears fall freely, the crystal feathers on her wings catching the light as she wept. She did not know how long she stayed there, lying in the shadows, her small body trembling with cold and pain. Suddenly a soft sound disturbed the quiet. Footsteps. Careful and slow, someone was coming. Illyra froze, fear rising like a cold wave inside her. The Virelans were told to avoid humans. Humans were unpredictable, sometimes kind but often careless or worse. She tried to hide, crawling behind a thick tree trunk, her eyes wide and watching. Figure appeared, a man wearing a simple dark uniform with tools hanging from his belt. His face was open and calm, his eyes gentle as they scanned the ground. He carried no weapons, only a small pack and a water bottle. Illyra's heart beat faster. Could she trust him? Should she stay hidden? The man stopped, kneeling carefully nearby. He looked directly at her, but he did not move closer or speak loudly. Instead, he slowly took out the water bottle and held it out. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly, his voice calm and clear. Illyra's breathing was ragged. She wanted to believe him, but it was hard. The man waited patiently. Then, he did something unexpected. He pulled a small first aid kit from his pack and began to carefully unwrap a cloth bandage. His hands were steady but gentle. Illyra saw the kindness in his eyes and took a small risk. She crawled a little closer, showing her injured wing. The man smiled slightly and started to clean the broken feathers and wrap the wing with the bandage. "It's not perfect," he said quietly, "but it should help until you can fly again." Illyra felt a strange warmth inside. No one had ever helped her like this before. Not her family, not her teachers, not even her closest friends. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. The man nodded. "I'm Jonah. I'm from the human expedition. What's your name?" "Illyra," she answered, watching him carefully. Jonah offered her some water. She drank slowly, feeling the cool liquid soothe her throat. "We need to get you somewhere. Safe," Jonah said. "Can you stand?" Illyra tried, wincing as pain shot through her side and wing, but with Jonah's help she got to her feet. Together they started moving carefully through the jungle. The trees here were taller and thicker than anywhere else on Ralanthus. Strange sounds came from the shadows, calls of animals she had never heard before. Illyra looked at Jonah. "Why do you help me?" she asked. Jonah smiled, though it was a little sad. "Because everyone deserves help when they're hurt, no matter where they come from." Illyra thought about that. Her world had taught her to be careful, to keep distance from humans. But Jonah was different. He was kind, brave, and gentle. The two walked side by side, the strange quiet of the jungle around them. Illyra leaned on Jonah when she needed to, and Jonah watched over her like a protector. But far away, hidden in the shadows beyond the trees, something was watching. A small drone blinked with red lights, sending signals back to a human base. Jonah's unauthorized help might cause trouble for both of them. For now, though, in the cool shade of the jungle, a human and an alien girl walked together, starting a story neither of them could yet understand. The jungle around Illyra and Jonah was alive with sounds. Strange birds called softly from the treetops, and distant rustling hinted at animals moving through the thick undergrowth. The two moved carefully, stepping over twisted roots and dodging sharp branches. Illyra's injured wing ached with every step, but Jonah's steady presence gave her strength. Jonah glanced at her, his dark eyes full of concern. "We need to find the signal tower," he said quietly. "It's the only way to call for help." Illyra nodded. She didn't know much about humans, but she trusted Jonah. He had helped her when she was alone and scared, and now she depended on him to get her back to safety. The signal tower was a long walk from where she had fallen, deep inside the restricted zone. No one was allowed to enter without permission. The humans had called it a no-go area, but Jonah didn't care about rules. He only cared about helping. As they moved forward, Illyra tried to remember everything she knew about humans. Stories from her people had painted them as wild and unpredictable. Some said humans were clever but also careless, sometimes even dangerous. But Jonah was different. He was gentle and careful, treating her with respect, not fear or anger. Suddenly, a low growl came from the bushes nearby. Both froze. From the shadows, a large creature appeared, a four-legged beast with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. It was unlike any animal Illyra had ever seen, with thick fur and claws that could tear through bark. Jonah stepped in front of Illyra, raising his hands slowly. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The beast growled louder, muscles tensed to attack. Jonah reached into his pack and pulled out a small device. A soft blue light shone from it, and the creature hesitated, then backed away slowly, disappearing into the trees. Illyra breathed a sigh of relief. "What was that?" Jonah smiled. "A stun beacon. It doesn't hurt them, but it scares them off." She looked at him with new respect. "You really want to help me?" Jonah shrugged. "Everyone deserves help. Doesn't matter where they come from." They continued their journey, moving slower now. Illyra's wing was heavy, and the pain was sharper. Jonah helped her climb over rocks and pushed through thick vines. After a while, they came to a small clearing where the signal tower stood tall. It was old and rusty, but still pulsing with light at the top. Jonah pulled out his communicator and tried to connect. Static filled the air. "It's weak," Jonah said, frowning. "I'll have to climb up and fix it." Illyra looked up at the tower. "I can help," she said, surprising herself. Jonah nodded. "Okay, but be careful." They climbed the metal stairs slowly. Illyra used her good wing to hold on, while Jonah worked with the tools. At the top, Jonah opened the panel and began repairing the antenna. Illyra watched, fascinated by his careful hands. Suddenly, the communicator beeped. Jonah smiled. "It's working. I'll send a message now." As he sent the signal, Illyra felt a strange hope grow inside her. Maybe help would come soon, but then footsteps echoed below. "Jonah," a sharp voice called. "What are you doing up there?" Jonah looked down and saw 2 soldiers from the Expeditionary Corps. Their faces were stern, eyes cold. "You're not authorized to be here," one said. "Step down immediately." Jonah frowned. "I'm helping her. She's injured." The soldier shook his head. "Protocol is clear. No contact with alien civilians in restricted zones. You're to be detained." Elira's heart sank. She looked at Jonah, fear and worry in her eyes. Jonah climbed down carefully, hands raised. The soldiers grabbed him, pulling him toward their vehicle. "Elira," Jonah said softly, "stay hidden. I'll be okay." But Elira didn't want to leave him. She wanted to help, to stay by his side. As the soldiers took Jonah away, Elira made a decision. She couldn't just wait. She had to do something. Anything. She climbed back down from the tower, moving quickly but quietly. Her wing ached, but her mind was sharp. She followed the soldiers and Jonah at a distance through thick trees and muddy paths. Suddenly, a loud roar shattered the air. The soldiers froze. From the jungle, a huge predator burst out, its eyes glowing, red, teeth bared. It charged straight at them. Jonah pushed the soldiers back, pulling out a stun gun. But the creature was too fast. Elira's instincts took over. She remembered the sonic cry her people used, a powerful sound that could confuse enemies and protect friends. She took a deep breath and let out a sharp, loud cry. The creature stopped, shaking its head as if in pain. It growled and backed away, disappearing into the forest. The soldiers stared at her, shocked. Jonah looked at Elira with surprise and gratitude. "That was incredible," one soldier spoke, softly. "Maybe we were wrong about you." Jonah was released from their grip. Elira felt a new hope. Maybe humans and Varellans could find a way to trust each other. Together they walked back to the clearing. The danger passed. For now. The jungle grew darker as the twin suns dipped behind the thick canopy. Shadows stretched long over the moss-covered ground, and the sounds of the wild grew louder, chirping insects, distant howls, and the rustling of unseen creatures. Elira and Jonah moved carefully, side by side. Her injured wing, though wrapped with a bandage, still ached, but she was determined to keep going. Jonah kept a steady pace, watching the path ahead, his hand often reaching out to steady her. The signal had been sent, but no reply came yet. They needed to get to the edge of the restricted zone, where communication was stronger before help could arrive. The journey was dangerous. The jungle was thick and full of dangers both known and unknown. As they walked, Elira's mind wandered. She wanted to understand Jonah, and through him the humans. Her people often warned her. Humans were unpredictable and could be dangerous. Yet Jonah had saved her. He had treated her with kindness, not fear or suspicion. "Jonah," Elira said quietly, breaking the silence, "why do your people fear my kind?" Jonah looked at her thoughtfully. "I don't know all the reasons, but I think it's because humans fear what they don't understand. There have been conflicts before and old stories about danger. But I believe we can do better." Elira nodded slowly. "My people say humans are reckless, that you destroy without thinking." Jonah smiled, a little sadly. "Sometimes that's true, but sometimes humans also build, protect, and care deeply. We just have to choose which part we want to show." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden noise, a sharp crack nearby. Both froze. A group of native creatures appeared. Small, quick, with bright eyes and curious movements. They watched Elira and Jonah, unsure if the strangers were friend or threat. Elira smiled gently, holding out a hand in peace. One creature stepped forward and sniffed her fingers, then scampered away, signaling to the others. They disappeared into the trees, leaving the path clear. Jonah laughed softly. "You have a way with them." Elira smiled back. "The jungle is my home. They sense when you mean no harm." They continued walking until the ground beneath them suddenly changed. The thick jungle opened into a narrow canyon, its steep walls rising high above. "This is the edge of the restricted zone," Jonah said. If we can get to the top, we'll be closer to base and to safety. The climb was difficult. Loose rocks and slippery soil made every step dangerous. Elira's wing throbbed painfully, but she refused to stop. Jonah reached out, helping her up. "Careful," he said. "We're almost there." At the top, the sky stretched wide and open. The lights of the human base flickered in the distance, a small collection of buildings and towers surrounded by energy shields. Suddenly, a sharp voice came from behind them. "Stop right there." Elira and Jonah turned to see a group of human soldiers blocking the path. Their faces were hard and their eyes wary. "You were told to stay inside the base," one officer said sternly. "What are you doing out here, Private Reed?" Jonah stepped forward, calm but firm. "I was helping an injured alien. She needed aid." The officer's expression hardened. "Protocol forbids unauthorized contact with alien civilians. You are under arrest." Elira's heart sank. She looked at Jonah, fear and worry filling her eyes. Jonah raised his hands slowly. "I understand, but I did what I thought was right." The officer barked orders and soldiers moved in to detain Jonah. Elira took a step forward, her voice trembling but clear. "Wait, I want to speak." The soldiers hesitated. Elira stood tall, despite her pain. "I am Elira of the Virilan people. This human saved my life. Without him, I would have died." The officers exchanged glances. One spoke into a communicator, then nodded. "Very well. You will both come with us for questioning." Jonah looked at Elira and gave a small, reassuring smile. "We'll get through this." As they walked toward the base, Elira felt a strange mix of fear and hope. She did not know what awaited them inside the human camp, but she believed in Jonah's kindness and in the chance for something new. That night, in a small holding room, Elira and Jonah sat side by side. Soldiers watched them closely, but they spoke quietly. "I don't want to be a prisoner," Elira said softly. "You're not," Jonah said. "We just need to explain what happened." Elira looked out the small window, seeing the jungle's edge fading into darkness. "Do you think your people will understand?" she asked. Jonah hesitated. "Some will, some won't, but I believe if we show them the truth, that humans can be kind, that aliens can trust, maybe things will change." Elira smiled faintly. "Then let's hope they listen." Outside, the base hummed with activity, unaware that this small moment could change the future of two worlds. The holding room was small and cold, lit by a single overhead light that flickered now and then. Elira sat quietly on the hard bench, her injured wing resting on her lap. Across from her, Jonah stood with his hands cuffed behind his back, his face calm but tired. Soldiers moved silently through the corridors outside, watching every door and window. Despite the silence, the air was thick with tension. Elira didn't know what would happen next. She felt vulnerable, trapped between two worlds she barely understood. Suddenly, the door hissed open, and a stern officer stepped inside. "Private Reed," the officer said, his voice cold. "You are being charged with disobeying orders and unauthorized contact with an alien civilian. You will be detained until a decision is made." Jonah nodded slowly. "I accept the consequences. I did what I believed was right." The officer's eyes flicked to Elira. "And you, alien, you will be returned to your people. No further contact with humans is allowed." Elira felt a heavy weight settle on her chest. She looked at Jonah. "Don't leave me," she whispered. Jonah gave a small smile. "I won't. I promise." That night, as the base grew quiet, an alarm suddenly blared. Red lights flashed, and the hum of machines grew louder. "What's happening?" Elira asked, fear gripping her. A soldier rushed in. "Predator breach. A native beast has entered the base. All personnel, prepare for emergency response." Jonah's eyes widened. "We need to help." The officers hesitated, but the situation was urgent. Jonah's cuffs were removed and he grabbed a stun gun from the wall. Elira struggled to stand, but pain flared through her wing. Still, she pushed herself up. The two were led outside, toward the base's perimeter, where a large shadow moved. Through the trees, the beast was enormous, with thick fur and glowing eyes. It growled fiercely, its breath steaming in the cool night air. Soldiers aimed weapons, but the creature was fast and strong. Jonah and Elira exchanged a quick look. They needed to work together. Elira took a deep breath, gathering strength. Then, she let out a loud, piercing cry, a sonic call that rang through the night. The beast paused, shaking its head as if in pain. It growled once more but stepped back, confused and retreating into the forest. The soldiers lowered their weapons, watching in stunned silence. Jonah approached Elira. "That was amazing," he said quietly. One officer stepped forward, nodding, slowly. "Your actions saved lives. Maybe there is more to this alliance than we thought." Elira looked around, feeling a new sense of hope. For the first time, humans and Virulans faced a real challenge, and they had stood together. Back, inside the base, the officers held an emergency meeting. Jonah was cleared of some charges but warned to follow orders strictly in the future. Elira was given medical care, and her wing was fitted with a special brace to help healing. Despite the pain, she felt stronger, not just because of the treatment, but because of the trust growing between her and Jonah. Days passed, and word of their cooperation spread through the base. Some soldiers remained skeptical, but many began to see that humans and aliens could work together. One evening, Jonah and Elira sat by a window, watching the stars appear in the clear sky. "I never expected to find a friend like you here," Jonah said. Elira smiled softly. "And I never thought I would trust a human." Jonah laughed. "Maybe this is just the beginning." As the night deepened, the two looked out over the jungle, ready to face whatever came next, together. The days passed slowly inside the base. Elira was still healing, her wing wrapped in a strong brace that limited her movement but helped her recover. Jonah was allowed to stay nearby, though under close watch. Their quiet companionship grew stronger with each passing moment, a small bridge between two very different worlds, but not everyone was happy. The base commander, a strict woman named Captain Loran, paced the room where the tribunal was held. The walls were bare, the air thick with tension. Jonah stood before her and a panel of officers, accused of breaking strict rules by helping an alien civilian inside the restricted zone. Captain Loran's voice was sharp. "Private Reed, you knowingly disobeyed orders and endangered the mission. Why?" Jonah looked straight at her, calm but firm. "Because she was injured and alone. No one else would help. I chose to do what was right." The tribunal members whispered among themselves, but Jonah held his ground. Elira sat quietly at the side, watching. She knew the rules were strict for a reason, but sometimes rules needed to change. When it was her turn, she stood slowly, still feeling the pain in her wing. "My name is Elira," she said softly but clearly. "I am a Virelan. I was hurt and trapped in the restricted zone. If not for Jonah, I would have died." She paused, looking at the officers. He did not break rules to harm anyone, he saved a life. One officer cleared his throat. "But what if this causes problems? What if other humans and aliens don't follow protocol? This could lead to chaos." Elira shook her head gently. "Chaos comes from fear, but trust grows from kindness." The room grew quiet. Her words hung in the air. Captain Loran studied Elira carefully, then turned back to Jonah. "Your actions may have saved a life, but you must understand the consequences. We cannot allow this to happen again." Jonah nodded. "I understand, but maybe it's time for a new way, one that allows humans and aliens to help each other when it matters." After the tribunal, Jonah was allowed to return to duty, but was warned to follow orders carefully. Elira was offered a place at the base where she could recover fully and speak with others about her people. The news of their story spread quickly, reaching both human and Virelan channels. Some were skeptical, others hopeful. Elira began working, with the base medics, sharing knowledge about Virilan biology and healing methods. Jonah helped repair equipment and translated messages between the two species. Together, they built a small community, a fragile but growing connection. One afternoon, while walking near the edge of the jungle, Jonah asked, "Do you think your people will accept this?" Elira looked at the trees, thinking, "Some will, some will not. But I believe that seeing kindness in action can change hearts." Jonah smiled. "That's what humans call hope." Elira laughed softly. "Then let us hope together." As they returned to the base, the jungle seemed less dark, less wild. It was no longer a place of danger, but a place where new friendships could grow. That night, as the stars shone bright in the clear sky, Elira and Jonah sat side by side, ready to face whatever came next, united by a simple truth: kindness could rewrite the rules. The sun rose gently over the green canopy of the jungle, casting golden light across the human base. Birds chirped, leaves danced in the breeze, and the once hostile atmosphere felt calm, almost peaceful. Inside the base, Elira walked slowly through the medical wing. Her wing brace had been removed the day before. Though she still moved carefully, her steps were steady. She wore a soft cloth. Over her shoulders, the mark of her Varellan clan stitched in silver. Jonah met her near the garden area, smiling as he saw her. "You're walking better today," he said. "I feel stronger," Elira replied, "and more hopeful." Their days had become routine. They met in the mornings, worked together with base teams in the afternoon, and often talked late into the evening. Elira shared stories of her people, tales of glowing rivers, silent mountain cities, and songs sung only under the twin moons. Jonah in return told her about Earth, about oceans, deserts, snow, and stars seen from rooftops. They were different, yet somehow they understood each other, but not everyone at the base felt the same. Some soldiers avoided Elira, whispering behind her back. Others questioned Jonah's choices. Still, no one stopped them from working. The base leaders watched silently, unsure whether to allow this growing connection or stop it before it spread. One day, a group of visitors arrived from the Virilan side. They wore long robes and carried symbols of peace. Elira recognized one of them at once, Elder Saren, a respected voice from her home city. Elder Saren stepped forward with slow grace, eyes resting on Elira. "Child, we heard of your rescue, and of your human friend." Elira bowed her head respectfully. "Yes, Elder. He saved me when I was alone. Without him, I would not be here." The elder looked at Jonah. "Many among our people fear humans. They remember only the accidents and the mistakes, but your kindness has traveled far." Jonah nodded. "I didn't do it for attention. I did it because it was right." Elder Saren gave a small smile. "That is the beginning of understanding." A short meeting was held between the Virilan visitors and the base commanders. Elira and Jonah were asked to speak. Together they explained how they survived the jungle, how they faced danger, and how trust had grown between them. Jonah said, "Sometimes rules keep us safe, but sometimes they keep us apart." Elira added, "We followed our hearts when rules could not guide us. That is why we stand here today." After their speech, there was a long silence. Then Elder Saren stepped forward. "Let us begin something new. A small project, a joint effort. One human and one Varellan. Let them work together, not just to survive, but to build." Captain Loran raised an eyebrow. "That's risky." "Maybe," Saren replied. "But peace always begins with risk." So it began. Elira and Jonah were chosen to lead a new mission, to build a research station at the edge of the jungle, where humans and Varellans could learn from each other. A place of shared knowledge, a place of peace. The work was not easy. Supplies had to be brought from far away. Crews needed to be trained. And trust, real trust, took time. But slowly the pieces came together. Jonah worked on structure and power systems. Elira helped design the inside spaces to be welcoming for both species. Others joined them too, some curious, some cautious. One afternoon, while fixing a solar panel, Jonah looked down and saw Elira arranging colorful stones in a circle. "What are you doing?" he called. "It's a welcome sign," she replied. "A symbol from my people," Jonah smiled. "Then I'll add something too." He placed a small earth flag beside the stones. Together it looked perfect. As the days passed, the small station began to shine, a real symbol of what was possible when two very different people worked side by side. And while the jungle still whispered its wild songs beyond the trees, something new had grown at its edge. A quiet promise. The jungle breeze was calm that morning. Soft rays of sunlight filtered through the trees as birds sang their usual songs. At the edge of the jungle, the new research station stood proudly. It wasn't large, but it was beautiful in its own way. Part human, part Virellan, and entirely built on cooperation. Jonah stood near the entrance, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked over the polished panels and glass walls. He had never imagined something like this could be real, a place where humans and aliens worked together, not just for safety, but for friendship. Elira stepped out from inside, carrying a tray of tea-like drinks made from Virellan herbs. Her wing brace was finally off. Though her wing could no longer fly as before, she moved with strength and confidence. She handed Jonah a cup. "It's ready," she said, smiling. "The station is complete." Jonah took a sip and nodded. "We did it." In just a few weeks, they had turned an idea into something living. Now 2 flags flew side by side above the entrance, one for Earth, one for Virella. Later that day, a small crowd gathered for the opening ceremony. There were soldiers, scientists, elders, and explorers. Some were serious, some were curious. Most were simply quiet, watching what had become possible. Captain Loran stood at the front with Elder Saren. Though both had been cautious in the past, today they wore gentle expressions. Jonah and Elira stood side by side as the captain stepped forward. "Not long ago," Loran said, "this land was filled with silence, distrust, and distance. Now it is filled with learning and the first steps of peace." She turned to Jonah. "Private Reed, you followed your heart, not your orders. That was risky. But in the end, you helped build something greater than protocol." Elder Saren stepped next. "And Elira of Virella, you were the first to accept the hand of a human. Your courage gave others the strength to follow." The crowd clapped gently, and for a moment there was a quiet feeling of shared hope. Later, as the visitors explored the station, Jonah and Elira took a walk down a small path behind the building. The jungle stood still around them, filled with green light and memories. Jonah picked up a smooth stone from the ground. "Do you remember when we were lost in here?" he asked. Elira smiled. "You were the one who got us through." "No," Jonah said, shaking his head. "We got through together." They walked until they reached a clearing. A wide patch of grass opened under the sky, and 2 benches had been placed there, one made of metal, one of wood and vine. A perfect symbol of both worlds. They sat quietly, listening to the wind. "I used to think humans and Virellans could never understand each other," Elira said, "but now I know we don't have to be the same to be kind." Jonah nodded. Kindness is its own language. A soft sound interrupted their thoughts. Children's laughter. Down the path came 2 small groups. A young Virellan girl with tiny wings walked beside a human boy with a curious look in his eyes. They chased each other playfully through the grass. Their parents followed behind, smiling. Elira's eyes lit up. "Do you see that?" Jonah chuckled. "That's the future." They sat there watching the children play, and the green light of the jungle felt softer, almost golden. From above, the 2 flags waved gently in the breeze, proof that once a human reached out to an injured alien girl, and she reached back. Not with fear, but with trust. And in that trust, something beautiful began.